Hi, I'm Benjamin Mac Jackson, founder of the World War II Veterans History Project. I started this project in the summer of 2015 with the goal of providing knowledge and inspiration to my generation so they can better appreciate and understand what these heroes went through. My mission is to preserve the memories of the greatest generation. In this story, World War II veteran Jack Walker, a staff sergeant in the United States Marine Corps, shares his experiences serving in the 3rd Marine Division during the war. He served in Guadalcanal, Guam, and Iwo Jima, and saw combat on many occasions. He also describes many humorous and unusual experiences on the islands. Here's his story.
Jack A. Walker. My rank was Staff Sergeant. I graduated from high school in 1942, and was just before or just after that, the Japanese struck Pearl Harbor. So I had a very good friend, and we decided we wanted to join the Navy. The war was on, for sure. So we went. I lived in a small town, about 8 miles north of Scranton, Pennsylvania. And so we had to go to Scranton. That's where the recruiting offices were. And we found the offices. The Navy office that we wanted to join, they were closed. I don't know whether it was lunch or what. So we were kind of disappointed. We were walking down the hall, and this Marine recruiter stepped out and said, "What's going on?" And we said, "Well, we came down to join the Navy, and they're closed." He said, "Well, why don't you come on in and we'll talk. I'll tell you a little bit about the Marine Corps. Maybe you'd like to be a Marine." So we did. Anyway, he kind of convinced us, and so gave us papers. We had to, because we were only 18, we had to get our parents' permission. The deal was that we said we'd join, but we wanted to go in together. Oh, it was no problem at all. Well, so we did the paperwork and sent that down, and we were waiting. So I used to call into Hal every other day and say, "You hear anything?" Finally, this day came, and Hal called me and he said, "You're going, right?" I said, "Well, I'm waiting for a call." He said, "Well, they called me. I have to be in Scranton," whatever it was. They hadn't called me. So Hal went, and I was kind of upset about that. It was about a week later they called me to go down. Went to Scranton, and they sent us down to Philadelphia, which is where they were collecting people there. From there, they sent me to Parris Island, South Carolina, for my boot training. Did that at Parris Island, and then the last few days of my boot training, they started to ask us what assets did we have as far as what we could do. And it occurred to me, I don't know why. I was thinking, I don't know, what am I going to tell them? And my senior year in high school, I took typing, touch typing. So, so I said, well, I can touch type. Oh, okay, you're going to go to uh, school. Well, I got to school and and now they're going to teach me how to touch type. I said, but I already know. But they insisted, you got to teach me from the beginning. After that, I couldn't type for nothing. But the reason of that area that they sent me to, they put me with the quartermasters. I didn't know anything about the quartermasters either, um, but they did give me a rank of PFC because I was some kind of a specialist. And off I went. They put us on a train for the West Coast, and the all the windows in the train were kind of blacked out. I forget whether it was curtains or something. Anyway, we never got to see any of the country as we were crossing. I got out there, and the 3rd Marine Division was just forming. They, as I recall, they had some Marines from Iceland joined. They were some kind of specialists. And then the rest of the division ultimately got together. So I forgot now whether it was 2 months or 3 months we were there. And then we got orders to go overseas. So they took us down to San Diego, and there was a old rickety looking banana boat there. It was actually a banana boat that was plying along the South American coast. Now they divided the division in two parts, and one part went on a luxury liner, and my part went on this banana boat. And it was terrible. We're going to New Zealand because at that time the Japanese were kind of threatening Australia. The Australians, their army was over in Africa. So we went there kind of as a defense. We went to Guadalcanal. Now, Guadalcanal had already been taken, so we were going there and set up a base, which is what we did. And we stayed there, I can't tell you how long, but then the division came back. Then they sent us back aboard ship, and we went to Guam. We were on the invasion of Guam. After we took that became our base. There was an admiral at that time, I can't remember his name, but anyway, he moved his staff in and he built a area for him. And the reason I mention that is because when we were on the attack earlier, one one of our guys climbing up this cliff, and there were some caves. He was a big man. He'd been a champion boxer with the Pacific Fleet at one time. Anyway, he climbed up there and looked in one of the caves, and he came back to the mouth of the cave, and he's waving, just waving. Next thing I know, he's got these 2 little Japanese soldiers, and he throws them out. Well, what was in there were cases of sake. And he was a heavy drinker, so that was right. That was right for him. But anyway, we ended up with a case of this stuff, and but we're ready to move inland. So somebody said, "Well, let's just bury it, and then later we can come back and dig it up." So that was good. We put it where a tree had been blown out, put it under the roots and covered it up, and went on our way. We went in and built a base camp to the north, and we're training again. There were still a few Japanese out there. Occasionally, one of them would come in and try to steal something, and they'd be captured. And time went by, and then somebody, one Sunday I remember, somebody said, "Hey, we had that case of sake down there in the canyon." Yeah. Well, in my squad tent, the motor pool sergeant was one of the people. We had 6 men in tent. So he got a Jeep, and we went down to find this. Well, what happened was the admiral built their compound up there on that plateau where we had buried this sake, and it ended up that it was under cement. They had cemented this area for a mess hall, and they covered up our sake. Our next adventure was Iwo Jima. Yeah. So we went to Iwo Jima. We were not first. I think we went in the 3rd day, as I recall. They had the guys with the flag were already in there, and it was a terrible place. It was a black sand, because I was a volcano constructed, you know. So we did pretty well there, and we, you know, we're cleaning them out. The Japanese on the end of the island, they had caves, and in one of these caves they had a huge mortar. I could never understand this. Like in the evening, maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they would wheel that out and they'd fire a shell. And it would go the length of the island, over Suribachi, and out into the ocean. And I often wonder, these guys have been there for heaven only knows how long, you know, 20 years, and they still didn't realize what they had going for them. So we stayed there, I don't know, 2 weeks, I guess. And then they brought us back to Guam. And then they told us, well, we gotta replace the people that they lost, and that our next trip was going to be to Japan. That was the plan. We were going to land on Japanese soil. And just happenstance, but that's shortly after that they dropped the atomic bomb, so there was no point in our going to Japan. They put us, they loaded everybody that they could on a steamer and brought us back to San Diego. That ended my service in the Marine Corps.
In this story, World War II veteran Adele Walker, a corporal in the United States Marine Corps, shares her experiences serving on the home front during the war. She describes occasions where she got in trouble with her commanding officer, who ended up becoming her husband. Hearing firsthand from a pioneer of female service in the military is truly an honor. Here's her story.
Adele Walker, corporal. United States Marine Corps, Women's Reserve. I had a friend, Julia. Julie says to me, we both worked at Park Davis, that's a pharmaceutical place. And she said, will you come with me to the recruiting office? And we'll go there on Saturday, and then we'll go on the bridge, through the bridge, whatever, to Canada and do our Christmas shopping. This was December 11th. Well, it's okay. No, why not? So we met and went to Detroit downtown to the recruiting place, and nobody's there. The office is closed, and she wanted to be a wave. It's okay. So here comes a Marine. I says, where is the Navy? He says, oh, they're celebrating a birthday. It's November 11th, and they're closed. I says, well, big deal, you know. Me and my big mouth. I said, Julie, we'll have to come back next week. She says, oh, I wanted to have this done with because my dad is in real good mood, you know. So this Marine comes along. And he says, you know, he asked us what the problem was. He says, well, why don't you come in and see what the Marine Corps has to offer? I said, Julie, what do you think? She said, okay. She says she's going to take this test, you know. And so I'm sitting there and I'm looking out the windows. And he says, well, why don't you, you know, have something to do? You can fill one out. I says, yeah, I can fill it out. Well, little did I know that he kept those forms. And he says, and take this home and have your parents sign an okay, because this was, I wasn't old enough. And neither was Julie, as a matter of fact. So, okay, that's, you know, we can do that. And so when I get off, I said, well, call me when you get to work Monday and let me know what happened, you know. Well, she called me Monday. She says, what'd you do with your papers? I says, I mailed them in. It didn't matter, you know. And she says, well, my dad tore my papers up, so I guess I'm not going with you. I said, well, I'm not. I really didn't care what I put down for the answers. Would you believe this was December 11th and November 11th, and December 11th, I was on a train. Well, it was scary because I was never away from my parents and my sisters. And I don't know. I figured, hey, they won't keep me because I don't know anything what they're talking about and fill out all these forms, you know. They kept me. So I was there, and then they sent me to quartermaster school. Everything was new. I was never away from home like this, you know. So there are a lot of rules, and some of which I broke right away. And like they mentioned, well, they told you the rules. You always wear a cover on your head. Well, I went outside to shake out some crumbs out of whatever, you know. Oh my gosh, you think I stole something or really shot somebody because I'm shaking up, but I didn't have a head cover. So I went outdoors without my head being covered. And that wasn't the first time, but this is the first time I got caught. So that's it. It was upsetting for the corporals and sergeants, you know, but they gave the message to me real good, real well. I was on kitchen detail for a month when he was brought in. And my friends told me that we had a new staff sergeant, you know, so you just better be on your guard. I said, I couldn't care less because I wasn't going to be there for another 3 weeks or so. And so finally my time was up in the kitchen detail, and I started my duties back at the warehouse. I called it a warehouse. Anyway, and there was a note on the radiator, and it says, "Do not turn on." Who does he think he is? It's cold. We're freezing cold. So I turned it on, and it starts to leak. And who's upset? Staff Sergeant Walker. So we're going to go see the captain. But the captain wasn't in. And he knew about it. But he thought it'd scare me real well to follow the rules or whatever. But the reason he was upset is because this was a warehouse, and he put in a beautiful, like a linoleum, but it was very thick. So the floor was very comfortable to walk on, except when it got flooded. We never did get to call the captain in and see the damage that I caused. But they fixed it up again, and I had other mischief to get into. It was hard getting used to the rules and regulations, you know, but after a bit you got to know the people, the women in your barracks, and things that you should do, shouldn't do, and it wasn't difficult. It was, as a matter of the people I met there were wonderful, wonderful, and we were friends for life practically, except they moved where I didn't see them, and then we didn't communicate except maybe at Christmas time. But as far as I know right now, most of them are gone already. We'd get a furlough once a year, and you had to supply your own transportation, method of transportation, whatever. At one time, I was running late coming back to base, so my sister got this plane they called the airport, and he was bringing a soldier from California, and they stopped off in Michigan, and so I could get on that plane, and they were coming to DC, and so. But that was my first plane ride too. It was scary. Boy, I'll tell you, that was had a what do they call it, a one prop, and it was a December leave, so you know it was cold up there, and we hit a lot of turbulence and stuff. I was never so happy to get off a plane, to get back to base, you know. That was about it. My big adventures. Jack had a couple of guys that worked with him, and he had a car. So we'd go and have picnics with my 3 friends. They had a rumble seat in the back, but it was not part of the inside of the car. It was outside. And he's been working the whole week without stopping practically, and he says, you know, I can't keep my eyes open, I can't drive. So here are 5 of us, and we went to this, I don't know if you knew, but Virginia was a dry state, no liquor. So you go to a dance or whatever they call them, and everything goes under the table. The bottles cannot show on the table. And of course, I couldn't care less because I was never introduced to any drinks or anything. But he said he was tired already because he and somebody else were on some kind of a detail, and they didn't get much rest. They had to do this job or whatever. So I'm sitting, and he's driving, and he's going to sleep, and I says, hey, pull over, and we'll get somebody else to drive. Well, Jimmy, you gotta drive because he can't keep awake. So, okay, he's gonna drive. And every time, this is Highway 1, US 1, on the East Coast. Every time a truck would pass us, Jimmy would hang on to the rear of it until it got away from him. And this was nighttime, so he wasn't sure where to go. And we got back to the barracks, and I woke Jack, and I says, we're at the women's barracks, and you gotta get out of here. He drove himself and Jimmy back to their barracks. So the next day, we were working, and I says, well, you did a good job driving us home, Jimmy. I was so glad. He says, I drove. And I says, yeah, you drove. Because Jack was asleep. He says, I don't drive. I don't even have a license. Oh, dear. But it turned out that he carried him into the barracks because Jimmy was so, from all that excitement of his driving. So, anyway, that was our big deal. And my friend Wilma, who sat with Jimmy in the rumble seat, I never asked if she could drive. And she did. She knew how to drive. I didn't know how to drive. But that was close. That was really close. Because Jimmy never drove. He never drove before.
Jack and Adele Walker have been married 70 years and live in Lady Lake, Florida. To learn more about the World War II Veterans History Project, please visit our website at WWII VeteransHistoryProject.com. We look forward to seeing you again for more exciting stories from the greatest generation.